If you look at the world as a whole today, there are nearly 1,000 million people who don't have enough to eat, and there are 1,500 million people who are overweight or obese.
If we think about food production and consumption as being to provide us with or maintain and improve our health, then it's really working against that.
Perhaps need to produce our food in a more sustainable way, but actually we need to distribute it better.
I hope that the project will help people in a community with their own concerns to get engaged more in thinking about where food fits and what the concerns they have about food. To have some then interactions between the people who currently do research in the hope that they're trying to benefit people for the future, but may not be doing or addressing the kind of questions that people at the community level have.
Because I think a lot of the conflict that's coming around food is because people don't actually understand each other's positions about it.
Beans and cornbread, beans and cornbread.
With it being a cold day, we thought a nice hot, something hot like a hot pot or something like that would be nice. So we've got a couple of varieties in case somebody didn't like anything.
It's like having a meal in one, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And making sure that you had a bit of veg but with the meat and it looked pleasing and nice.
One pot in it.
Yeah. Much easier.
Mixed veg as well, so it doesn't take any putting together.
One of the things about Britain is we're the first industrialised nation, so it's generations since there was someone in their family who grew food. For a lot of people in urban areas, food just comes from somewhere else, doesn't it? It comes in the supermarket, it's often ready packaged, it's covered in plastic, you don't realise it's grown in soil and carrots should be dirty, when they come out of the ground, all that kind of stuff.
So what do we know about the food that we've bought? We've seen the nice pictures on the box, but what do we actually know about what's inside those boxes?
Modified maize, starch and preservatives. And the crumble is just the flour, sugar, margarine and emery. Doesn't see anything at all, as far as I can see, about where it come from, except that it is produced and packed in the UK for Iceland Foods.
The ingredients are hot pot sauce is 52%, sliced potatoes is 30%, cooked chicken is 10%.
That's quite small.
That's quite mean. And carrots are 8%. So a lot of sauce. A lot of sauce and not so much chicken. And the sauce contains lots of things. Yeah.
But water is the main ingredient.
Water is the main ingredient.
What does food mean to me? Well, home, love, warmth, family round the table. Thanks, Mum, that was lovely. Happy days.
Well, I don't know. Well, I've got 2 boys, so I need to buy a lot of it. I know that much because they're always hungry. I know I do treat them and maybe, reward them with food now and again, which my mum's always telling us off for, so maybe I feel a little bit guilty about that.
Food. It's great. I don't really think about it. It gives you energy.
Food. It's picking it off the tree or the bush or digging it up out of the ground, cleaning it off, cutting it up, eating it fresh. Lovely. And it's sharing it with friends and family.
We're here for a taster session on the Our Food project, which is a community-led food research project. I think that food research can be seen as very much a scientifically dominated area. It can be seen as very much tied up with the interests of large businesses that are involved in food systems. So I think that getting alternative perspectives into food research and informing the questions that are actually asked in the first place can only be a really positive thing.
I think it's worse, isn't it? Because we have more waste and we don't eat as much fresh stuff as what we used to years ago. And I think nobody sits down together like they did years ago. I'll have food.
So at this end we have my dad. The only problem is you've got to squeeze past each other. Chicken dad. And then over there we've got my mum in the kitchen, trying to get all the vegetables ready to come at the same time. And then we've got my brother. Yep, that's my brother Tim. Tim's 8 and I'm 10.
Turkey.
I think that would be.
But look at the consistency of.
I mean, we've come together and have chosen some food quite quickly. It was a very whistle-stop tour around Iceland, and we didn't spend a lot of time thinking what we were getting. It was a quick, hot food is a good idea. It's easy to put just a few things together, and it was amazingly cheap.
Were our expectations, I don't think, were fulfilled from the advertisement on the box. I think it looks nicer on the box than what it actually was. But then, like I say, everything always does. Of the two, the cottage pie was probably the nicer of the two. The chicken hot pot was eatable, but that's probably because we don't like to waste anything. Then we did eat it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't uneatable. But of the two, I think you're probably getting more value for money with the cottage pie than the chicken hot pot.
I think we have often used, so you talk to a retailer and they'll define a problem. We use those as a proxy for the public, because the retailer always says we only sell what the public wants. I'm not 100% convinced by that. So I think it is actually worth talking to people to actually define what the food system is we should have.
Well, there's lots of big issues around food. I think people are eating the wrong types of food. There's issues of health. People are wanting to grow their own food, but maybe they don't have the resources.
I don't go to the supermarket because I grow mine, and I can tell you where it all began. Now, once a year, same time every year, my family would pack us into the car, we'd drive into the countryside, we'd drive up this lane, we'd park on the verge, we'd get out of the car, and there would be this enormous bramble bush. Now, you're my dad and you've got gloves on. You're picking the brambles. Ma'am, you've got the basket, you're holding it, you're being filled up there. Now you're over here. You're on your knees. You're a dog. Called Sophie.
If we look at it in economic terms, if we really internalised the true costs, the wider impacts of food production, we would find that sustainably produced foods, such as organic foods or ecological foods, are cheaper to produce.
In general, you can say that the intensification has increased our reliance on non-renewable inputs in agriculture. So whereas 100 years ago we didn't need any diesel on the farms, we didn't need any mineral fertilizers on the farm, hardly any of the farmers here use pesticides, but nowadays we are completely dependent on them.
Kitchen wisdom, kitchen wisdom.
Want to impress with a romantic meal for two?
You know she likes lasagna.
4 minutes in the microwave.
No! Cook fresh.
Impress.
Costs less.
Kitchen wisdom.
It's the chicken. Oh, it's a big one.
Wow.
What a size.
Yes. So we know exactly where it's come from.
Yeah.
Then. That's brilliant.
Wonderful. It's not covered with
So what we decided to do this week was to go to the other end of the scale and try and source everything that was fresh. All the veg and everything's come from allotments and stuff like that, homegrown. Obviously it's fresher and a lot tastier. I mean, they say, people buy convenience foods because it's cheaper. Well, it's not always that case, is it?
Growing the food, taking it out, and then peel it and cook it, and then eating it. It's so lovely.
Waste. I grow more and more on my allotment, and I have got to find a way to supply more and more people.
Well, I don't have any issues with food. I mean, alright, I work a lot, so I buy a lot of ready meals, but I always check my labelling. I pride myself in that.
All around the world, historically, great cuisines developed around what was available to grow locally and what you could access. And they were largely plant-based diets, usually supplemented by some other form of proteins, meat, fishes, pulses, some kind. We have a diet now that is much more based on highly processed food and refined foods, fats, sugars. We've got a much higher fat intake, a larger intake of animal products and dairy products. And what we've seen over a period is that these all, consuming the wrong balance of this causes problems for us as individuals and communities. So we got a lot more people who have problems from diabetes, from heart disease, which are partly related to the diets that we consume.
The chicken just melts in your mouth.
There's no comparison really, is there, to what we had last week? Except it was called the same thing.
Chicken hot pot was gorgeous. I really liked it. The chicken was juicy and had lots of texture and kind of melted in your mouth. And there was lots of it.
Young parents with children at school will go for the quickness, go for some. They will not read, they will not travel, they'll not have cars and all that to travel all around to different places to get the best chicken or the best homemade fruit and veg and things like that. And I think the majority of people will be like that. If you've got money, or you've got a car, and you've got the time. The older people, yes, I would think they are now start thinking about what is good for them. Maybe a bit late for some of us, but I think that's what, I think a lot of older ones will be starting to think of things like that.
The council have increased the rent on the allotments. They've tripled it. So now I'm more determined than ever to supply more and more people with what I grow. So I think I will be going to the community centre and asking them if they'll give me a table in which I can display what I have and the people can buy it.
My two boys on a Saturday really love burger and chips. I found out recently that they're mostly horse meat. My children rely on me to feed them, and I rely on the supermarkets. I mean, I always took pride in checking my labels. No fat. There's no bloody beef in it.
Future for food, if we don't get our act together within the next 30 years, the next generation will have serious problems.
Another food scandal that already been the mad cow disease, and so there was this commission into the future of farming.
We need to link what we produce to what our nutritional needs are. So if we've got a lot of stuff that's high fat, high sugar, etc., and diets that aren't good for us, and when we're setting up the tax regimes, the incentives that makes that the cheapest stuff to produce as opposed to maybe fruits, vegetables, other things like that, then maybe we have to rethink that. And that's what we're looking there is sufficiency. Because really with food, all you need is enough.
Can you guys tell us about what's changed?
Well, the community centre said yes. So on a Wednesday, once a month, they give me a stall, I can take my produce there and I can display it, and people come into the community centre and they buy it. Not only that, but on that Wednesday lunchtime, there's a group of people who make soup.
When those actors stayed in character for the next day, and people could question them, and they did a really good job. But it was real theatre as opposed to to drama.
The food processors and the retailers should be honest and care about
Regulations
the
are only
people.
good if people stick to regulations. So it does then. We've got enough food to feed people at the moment. It's our distribution system. So it's the food system rather than the food production. That's the big issue.
We need to understand we have our own personal sort of diet, as it were, but within the broader framework of healthy food. And there's a lot of evidence now showing the detrimental impacts of consuming sort of pesticides, even at very low levels.
There is, and there is monitoring by the Pesticide Safety Directorate in this country of pesticide levels, and it's done as random samples. They go into supermarkets, pull stuff off the shelves.
Where the dialogue needs to come in is what we do about it and how we do something about it. That's the most important thing. There is obviously vested industrial interest in keeping the status quo. So the only way that academia can get the public engaged is by informing it and making it push the politicians to change something. That's my personal feeling about it. But we're not doing that very efficiently at the moment. That's why I'm supporting initiatives like the one you're doing at the moment.